really starting from the opening address with Merlin, and throughout the sessions, you've really had an opportunity to review the overall landscape in Mexico. Heard from specific operators in Mexico, both onshore and offshore, and different aspects of the industry. We're really going to focus on the outlook for onshore oil and gas moving forward. Clearly, Mexico has amazing geological resources and rich in opportunity. And on top of that, an interesting regulatory framework that allows the private and public investment to the benefit of the whole country. In researching for this panel, I kind of found it was actually there was less information than I thought I might find, even though the combined resources onshore, even before considering right now unconventionals, is higher onshore than offshore. Production significantly dwarfed by the offshore. And on top of that, activity over the last few years has seen a bit of a decrease, especially because COVID and price crashes, and we did discuss that already. From 2013 having 90 rigs active to almost going to single digits during the 2017 period, and now growing to kind of around 20 rigs in 2021. A lot of those drops were especially due to development wells stopping. So even at those low rig counts, since let's say 2019, about 150 wells have been drilled onshore, mostly in exploration programs, but not all, with Pemex and private operators roughly splitting those. And I think the panelists will speak to it. And still, Pemex has had various large discoveries, both around Veracruz and Tabasco, and the private operators as well have increased their reserves, as just heard, with success rates around the 60% on average. So what does the future hold for onshore production? Can we get back to or beyond the activity levels in the past? Will that be exploration or development? So we'll kind of explore those. We'll explore first the general interest onshore, dive more into the latest discoveries and the challenges and opportunities with them, and then look at any sizable production will require infrastructure. So we'll talk about that and explore that, and really what the future scenarios can hold. So Alexandro, I think we're going to start with you on the first question here, looking at what interest is there from onshore operators regarding oil and gas exploration and production, and how was the approach of private operators, or maybe what you've seen from Pemex on the service side, differed when it's come to differed or been the same when it's come to addressing this question?
Sure, thank you, Niels, for the question. Well, as a result of the energy reform in 2013, in Mexico today has been 3 round bids and 2 associations. Which these round bids, the onshore operators were born in Mexico in round 1.3. 8 contractual areas were awarded in Burgos, 5 in the North region, and 12 in the South region, for a total of 25 contracts in onshore blocks. In round 2, 21 contracts were awarded, for a total of 46 contracts were formalized for onshore blocks derived from these round bids. So only 3 contractual areas were void because there was no offers for that. But this gives you the idea of the success of these round bids. Can tell you the interest in the onshore blocks. Practically all of these round bids were has offers and has been developed. Well, they have different particular situations, like the change on the laws and everything that can be slowing down the operation of the private operators. But step by step, everything has been coming through, and the interest is there. It has been a challenging process due to general circumstance that the sector is going through, and the particularity of the operations in Mexico, but the interest is there, and is like the nature of all these projects, the approach for the production onshore operators has been increasing. Like I say, the geology in the US side and the geology in the Mexican side is the same. And there is a lot of upside potential here in Mexico, and there is a lot to do. And all the private operators are committed to continue working and increasing activities here in Mexico. So basically, regarding the approach, how works from Pemex and from the private operators, it's different because Pemex has reserved for itself the 83% of the Mexico 2P reserves. And obviously they can choose the fields to develop and minimize the risk. Private operators must focus on developing the fields that were available in the rounds, which for some reason, Pemex doesn't get it in round 0. So the approach is different. However, the onshore operators and Pemex share many aspects, such as the production and marketing infrastructure of the hydrocarbons. Today, there are no private terminals for the storage of crude, for example, only for refined products. In the same way, most of the hydrocarbons are marketed right now through Pemex. There is a lot to do together, and there is a lot of interest in participating in some way with Pemex in its existing or new fields. It could be through farm outs, shared production, or the integral service contracts. But basically, we need to find a way to continue developing these resources for the Mexican oil and gas industry.
Great, thanks, Alexandro. I think you touched as well on some of those contracts coming out of Pemex, and maybe later we'll go back to that because there has been some recent activity back there, right? So we can examine that. Dr. Moreira, maybe from a CNH point of view, you can comment, and also the differences you've seen between Pemex and the private operators.
They are not exactly the same because they didn't start the same. Okay, Mexico has roughly about 1,000 areas which are susceptible to being exploited or explored first. Okay, so it's 1,000 areas. Out of the 1,000 areas, about 500 have not been assigned to anybody. They're still there waiting for some procedure to assign them, either rounds or assignments or contracts or whatever. And right now we have 399 areas that have been assigned to Pemex, and 111 that have been contracted to different companies. In some of them have been private companies, about 89. Some of them have alliances between Pemex and a private company, and some of them are directly to Pemex. Okay, so as you can see, there are different kinds of operators. Most of the areas that have been given in contracts belong to two different groups. One of them is areas that need to be explored first. And I say that because they require time. Exploration, onshore or offshore, requires time. Maybe 3 years, maybe 10 years, depends on the area, depends on if it's offshore and what's the depth of the sea, etc. So we have to see that a lot of these areas, I would say roughly half of them, are still in the exploration phase. So we have to wait a little bit before oil can be produced and before we can see what the general effect of the reform was. What can we see now from the point of view of the National Hydrocarbon Commission? One of them is that Mexico has invested more money in the last 5 years in prospection and exploration than in the previous 70 years. And what we have found is that there is far more oil than we expected. Okay, huge areas in the Gulf of Mexico, outside Yucatan, in the northern part of the country have been found to have potential. So the problem now is, how are we going to start this procedure to assign new areas to new companies? Okay, starting from that, what we can see is that the process is going very well. If you analyze the areas that have been found productive, the number of wells that have been declared commercially productive has been increasing, okay? And the private companies are doing very well, and they are invested quite a good number of dollars in that effort. And also Pemex is investing more money than ever. So we are now finding ourselves in a very strange situation. There is lots of reserves. There is more prospective resources being discovered. There is more money being invested, but we have to wait at least 3 or 4 years to see the effect of all this. And the effect is going to be an increase in the production of oil and an increase in the production of gas. Of course, my position personally is that gas is really more important than oil. We are moving towards a gas economy, and it's important for Mexico to develop the gas resources. I mean, gas is the best way to produce electricity, is the cheapest way to produce electricity. Gas is the detonator for industry. We have studies that compare those Mexican states that have available gas with those Mexican states that don't have available gas, and the difference in economic growth is incredible. So one thing that we have to do as a nation is we have to ensure that every Mexican state has available gas for industrial production. So as we can see, how are we going to move to this? The information that we have about gas in Mexico is that the resources of Mexico are quite enough for Mexico for the next 100 years. Okay, and I have some figures for you. I don't know if I'm allowed to share with you. So you can see some information about the oil production, especially the gas production. The first thing that we have to see is that production of oil and gas is something that takes time. Okay, we have to do prospection first. Prospection takes 1 or 2 years, is done by prospecting companies and identifies areas that have potential. Then we have exploration, 2 to 7 years, depending on if it's on land or if it's on deep waters. Then we have to have 1 to 4 years evaluation. So we have to understand that for a company to start producing, they have to be ready to be investing for at least minimum of 3 years before they can get oil. Some companies got areas that had already been explored, in which case evaluation and the beginning of extraction can be faster. Okay, next one, please. One thing that I wanted to share with you is how much money are we investing? And that is very incredible because Mexico is investing a lot of money, far more money than we have ever invested in oil and gas. In the last 5 years, since the energy reform was approved, we have invested $78 billion in oil and gas. But the important thing is that 17 billions, which is the number in the top right, has been invested in prospection and exploration. So this 17 billion, as I said, is an incredible amount of money. We have never spent so much money in exploration. But if you analyze who spent it, you can see that nearly half of the investment in prospection exploration has been done by private companies. So the new companies that operate in Mexico, there is 75 oil companies now in Mexico, have invested $17 billion in exploration and extraction. Pemex has also increased the amount of money that they are spending. They are already spending especially a lot on extraction, but some money has been used also for exploration. So what we have now, we have this enormous amount of money being invested, and as you can see, it's going to take time for this to come to fruitfulness. Okay, next one. And the other thing that we have to see is the discoveries. These are all the discoveries that have been done. We have done 15 discoveries in shallow water, 3 discoveries in deep water, and 17 discoveries on land. Okay, and that has increased the amount of oil that Mexico has as reserves in about 1,200 million barrels equivalent of oil in total. And that's, as I said, it's a quite a good number. Next one. And the other one is who is doing the discoveries. That's also very important. These are the discoveries. There's been 35 discoveries, and I'm only talking about the last 2 years, In the last 2 years, we have done 35 discoveries. Pemex has done 26, and the private companies have done 9. Okay, these are the discoveries, there have been more discoveries, but discoveries that CNH has registered as commercial discoveries, potential discoveries that has the potential to keep on growing. So we are now, if you see all the amount of total discoveries, you can see that we are increasing significantly the number of barrels of oil equivalent that have been increased as reserves or resources. That's why the number is different from the other one. Okay, so this is more or less what's going on, and you can see it's growing very fast. And the other one is to see what is going to happen with the production of natural gas. The production of natural gas has been more or less stable. It has a decrease from 2016 to 2017, and from then on, it's more or less stable in 4.7 million cubic feet per day. That's total production of natural gas in Mexico. It might sound that's a lot, but it's not enough. Mexico is consuming about 10,000 million cubic feet of gas per day. So this is only half of the amount of natural gas that the country needs. So 50% of our natural gas is now coming from the US, or some of it is coming from other countries, but very little. Most of them is US gas, and really across the border from Texas. So we are importing 5,000 million cubic feet of natural gas per day. And that's a big thing for Mexico. We need to see how we're going to face the growing amount of natural gas that the country needs. So we need more exploration, more production, and more infrastructure to distribute the natural gas. So what is coming for the natural gas in Mexico? Well, it's a period of incredible growth. Why? Because all the areas that have been under exploration, they're going to start extracting. And as I can say, I can see a very rosy future for natural gas in Mexico.
Actually, our next question in a way piggybacks on that, and we're going to stay with you, Dr. Moreira. Just in these latest exploration discoveries onshore, and you did mention a few and showed them up there, what's the technical difficulty of the extraction? What are some of the issues maybe with the geology being addressed by the operators?
A good question. I can't think of anything. The problem has been this past year has been COVID. Okay. A lot of companies that offer services for the petroleum and gas industry are foreign companies. And COVID has made a lot of companies wary of coming to the platforms and worry about the danger of coming into a new nation. So I would say that is the number one problem that we had this year. I hope that next year, that 2022 is going to be a different year because everything is going to go back to normal. But as far as I can see, that was the problem. It was one problem, I would say COVID.
Yeah, I think that's it's hard to avoid, right? Everyone did experience. I'm sure we're all ready to be done with it as well. Alexandro, maybe a follow-up for yourself. I guess any latest discoveries that you're excited about, or from a technical aspect, or maybe non-technical aspect, what are kind of some of the biggest barriers? And I guess we will go into infrastructure after this. So leaving that one aside for a second.
Sure. As the Dr. Moreira says, yeah, that's very true. The COVID bring an impact for everything, because besides the service companies, also we need to, as operators, we need to comply with the regulatory part. So the other regulatory offices had been shut down or working at minimum capacity. So you are not able to have the permits on time. So everybody's hoping, just to close that part, everybody's hoping that the next year we will be a boost, and everything hopefully will come back to normal. But talking about discoveries onshore, as the doctor says, everybody is working in the exploration side, and like he said, and I agree. To develop a discovery, it could take a year or 10 years, and there are some in the onshore operators. There are different challenges than the offshore operators, because you have to deal with the social part, you have to deal with landowners, you have to deal with local authorities, you have to deal with so many things to put together and finally work with your discoveries. So we are particularly as Roma Energy, we're working in 2 different blocks, in the Paraíso and Veracruz block, and finally we become a oil producers. Right now we are producing oil in Veracruz, but everything has been challenging because everything is really new. That there is a lack of infrastructure, and we are working on that. But every single thing is new, because the private operators in Mexico are practically new. So Pemex used to be there all the time, but we are facing that we are just starting on this. We don't start at the same time, like the doctor says. So everything is pretty new for us, and we work with the authorities and the regulatory offices to develop our discoveries. Your question is specific about new discoveries onshore, because there in my knowledge, besides the Itzachi and all the priority blocks that Pemex has in the private side for the operators, all are working yet in the exploration part. But for sure, for us that we are in Veracruz, Itzachi it's very exciting for us, because we are in the same region that we are working on it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's somewhat, I was looking myself too, it's a difficult question to address. There's all the great formations that have already been discovered, and to go back to those, and then, yeah, some of these deeper formations that are being discovered, the high temperature pressure are just amazing resources, right, before even getting into the unconventional. So that's why I flipped the question to you. I guess, okay, now that we've discovered them, the next step is the infrastructure, which we've touched on a few times. And it'll be crucial really to the onshore aspect, which everyone has said. So Yvonne, this one's going to go to you just to speak about what Mexico's onshore midstream infrastructure is and what it needs to be, and some of the costs and risks and how that can be spread between the private and public entities. So a bit of an open one for you to start with.
Thank you, Niels. First of all, I have to say I feel excited to be sharing this interesting panel discussion with such great leaders and influencers in the Mexico oil and gas industry. And I also want to thank the participants for joining and everybody that put together this great event. That being said, I believe midstream and production infrastructure is such an important and deep subject to address. And let's start by saying that there is no revenue from production if there's no possibility to evacuate production to consumer centers. So it's as easy as that. Midstream infrastructure is an integral part of the operator's development strategy, and careful planning needs to happen well before first oil happens. In onshore fields, Mexico has shown a very noble geology, and Pemex has had the possibility to exploit for decades important basins at very low cost per barrel. And in this process, a relevant onshore and midstream infrastructure was developed in most of the production areas in the country. So new private operators that arose from the energy reform have been able to use this infrastructure to deliver their products to Pemex facilities for processing. Great examples of that is for example, Alexandros field in Paraíso, which is planning to use existing infrastructure. We have Wintershall DEA in Ogarrio field. We have Fieldwood in Ichaquil and Pococh using the Tumut platform for early production systems. We have lifting in the Cuichapa field, Jaguar even. Warren Levi already presented something of this. We have Perenco in the Santuario and Magallanes field, Diabas, among many, many others. But not all of the private operators have in their long-term plans to depend on Pemex infrastructure, and for reasons like aging infrastructure, operating philosophy, reliability, and even Pemex liquidity issues, we are observing a trend in E&Ps to develop their own infrastructure to, for example, having the possibility of deliver their natural gas directly to the national pipeline system, the Sistran gas, without passing through one of the CPGs that Pemex owns. But the development of their own processing infrastructure, let's face it, is a capital-intensive process, and especially for fields with marginal production or shorter-term production profiles, it's clearly a challenge, and this is where Exterran in the past decades has had experience in Mexico working not only with Pemex but also with integrated contract service providers, private E&Ps, to provide critical integrated services for gas processing, compression, water treatment, and power generation. That means we own the infrastructure and provide a service to these companies that are probably smaller and have more capital constraints. And these services have helped our customers to use their limited capital in critical activities, and at the same time being able to receive high availability and efficiency in the operations. To close, I believe, in my opinion, there's a re-emergence of interest in onshore production with the new discoveries of giant fields like Ixachi, it was named before, and Keski, and some of the areas that Jaguar is developing that will support the national wet gas production. And in addition, I also believe farm outs are the truest form of risk sharing in terms of capital, expertise, infrastructure, and a great mechanism for onshore mature field development, let's say, not only new fields, but also mature fields. I believe Pemex could make really good use of private sector capital and knowledge of secondary recovery techniques from some private operators, but the reality is that this mechanism remains underdeveloped and underused in this current administration, and it could ramp up pretty soon. That would be a great something that I would ask Dr. Hector Moreira regarding the farm out agenda, let's say.
Perfect. Well, we're going to hear from him next. I guess in regards to the infrastructure side and from the CNH point of view, I guess as they move from exploration towards production, you're starting to see that more. What are some of the trends you're seeing and what's critical for the future from your perspective, Dr. Moreira?
I think what we need is, and that's my personal opinion, a phase 2 of the energy reform. Okay, for instance, if I'm going to produce gas and I'm going to feed that gas into a line that belongs to another company, Pemex or another company, what are the rules? Okay, up to now we have assumed that they would negotiate a contract, but I think we need a more strict rules on are you obliged to take that gas or not? And are you going to take, what exactly are the prices and how do you calculate the prices? So we need more regulations for the sharing of the infrastructure. And the other one is we have to decide what kind of national grid we need. okay, because that involves the production of all the companies. So if we say, is Pemex going to be the owner of all the infrastructure, or going to have a system in which different pieces belong to different people? So I think we have to, well, to decide what we're going to do regard the total infrastructure for the nation. And that is going to become more and more important, because Pemex was exploiting a limited area of the nation. If you analyze the story of the oil and gas production, well, up to very recently, 85% of the production came from the area in front of Tabasco and the sea in front of Tabasco. But now we have new areas, totally new areas that are being developed, okay, which is the water, the Perdido in front of Tamaulipas, and the north of Tamaulipas for gas. So we need like a new infrastructure, and that is a debate that has to be done in Mexico. How are we going to develop the infrastructure? And of course, well, that's pending. How are we going to develop the infrastructure? Who is going to pay the cost? And how is it going to share between all the companies that are involved? So if you ask me what is coming, I couldn't tell you, because it's a debate that is not here yet. And if you ask about farm outs, I think I agree with you. Farm outs is the best way for Pemex and the private company to share risk and to share capital. And Pemex has gone from saying, yes, I'm going to go for farm outs, to I'm going to wait. Okay. So we don't really know how many farm outs they're planning to do. I don't really know. I couldn't tell you, because they have not published it. It's not a closed issue. They're still debating if they're going to have how many farm outs. But if you see the needs of capital in this country, well, you're going to discover that before, Pemex had more areas that were in the production phase. Now Pemex has more areas that are in the exploration phase. So Pemex is going to need huge amounts of money in the next 10 years simply to develop the areas that already are assigned to Pemex. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we still have 500 areas that are not assigned to anybody. And if you analyze what is going to happen with the petroleum industry, I think we have to do things. We have to produce as much oil as we can while the price is good, and prepare for the next phase, which is going to be the gas phase. So this debate is another debate that is pending in Mexico, which is what is the transition between oil to gas for the private companies or for Pemex in Mexico. Thank you. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, that was great. And it's actually a great lead in. I'm just going to kind of change quickly the order of who we bring it to, and bring this one to Alexandro, kind of building on that. I guess, what do you see are the important and exciting opportunities for the future? We were talking about farm outs there. And maybe this is where we can touch in, is that dependent on hydraulic fracturing, which, coming from Canada, I definitely agree with Dr. Moria. I think it can be done safely and appropriately if properly regulated, and we've experienced that you can. So, but is it dependent on that? And yeah, really, what are the exciting things you're seeing, Alexandro, moving forward?
Sure. Well, yes, I think the unconventional part, it's something that needs to, it's a lot of debate about that, but I think in the conventional side, there is a lot yet to do. There is a lot of upside potential. So maybe the unconventional is something that we need to approach and can be done safely, but we cannot, we are not forced to stock in that. Regarding farm outs, there is a lot of conventional fields that right now, right away, the capital, I think, is there for doing that. The interests of the private operators are there. It's just a matter of when Pemex or is ever Pemex is gonna to decide to move forward with that. Right now, onshore, there are only 2 farm outs that are going on, and are going on perfectly. The Ogario and the Cárdenas Mora, one from Wintershell DEA and the other from from Hodney. So they are doing great. They are doing. I think that associations or farm outs are working perfect for PMEX, and there are like I want to think that are like a pilot, or they start with that. And I think the results are already there, that these companies are investing, and there is the best way to share risk and share capital with the private operators. And right now, the prices are right. In the future, like the Dr. Moreira says, the will be a turnaround to the gas side. But I think the time is right now to start moving forward with the associations. In my personal opinion, PMEX has to make the decision right away to start moving forward with the farm outs.
Great, thank you. Maybe Yvonne, build on a bit what you've said, and it's as well from the infrastructure angle and the hydraulic fracturing and water treatment. May have some angles on that. What are you guys seeing for the future?
Yeah, well, in my opinion, I agree with Dr. Hector and Alexandro on the gas side of things and the energy transition at our doorstep. In my opinion, the most exciting opportunity in Mexico in onshore plays right now is Ixachi, definitely. It's an exciting discovery, and it has so much potential of bringing gas to market. And in the other exciting part would be the development of the large prospective resources in shale gas that are located in Tamaulipas, Coahuila, and Nuevo León, for example. I think the recent polar vortex that hit Texas revealed key weaknesses in Mexico natural gas infrastructure, the dependency on natural gas imports, which we are importing 5.5 BCF a day, and the fall in wet gas or the stabilization of wet gas national production to 2.2 BCF, which, I mean, let's face it, demand keeps growing, and our internal production is more or less stable. It also revealed the lack of a strategic and operational storage to support natural gas supply and prices during these kinds of extreme events, which are happening more frequently. And I think the federal government noticed this and is stepping up to increase domestic production. I think the recent process that Pemex released for the Cuitláhuac field in the Burgos area is a testament of the willingness that Pemex has to increase domestic gas production. And the variation, depending on the possible implementation on fracking, is very large. So basically, between the portion of the Eagle Ford that has barely been touched, that hasn't very poor development, and other areas, I think all of them have sizable reserves. Some experts I read that it could be tens of billions of barrels of oil equivalent in those areas, which is more oil than the country has produced in conventional drilling for several decades. So the country also, I think in terms of reserves, we are between the 5th or the 6th country with more shale gas reserves in the world. So we should be leveraging on that fact. But there are important challenges for the development of these formations. Things like security, logistics, due to lack of infrastructure in that part of the country. Roads will have to be built, pipelines will need to be constructed to carry out the oil and the gas. And also there's the water treatment for the fracking operations. That's another important subject in which I think the country is not fully has the capabilities on the process of the fracking. Xterra has had presence in the Burgos Basin for, I think, for more than 20 years, since the 1990s, and has supported both Pemex and other service companies with natural gas compression and processing. And despite the logistic and security challenges in the region, we have learned to operate in this challenging environment. So I would say that many local operators would also learn to operate in this environment as well. So I think it's just a matter of willingness and provide the government to provide the proper policies and support to that operation.
Great. Well, I think, again, you guys are great with the segues here. So I'm going to switch to Dr. Moreira here. I guess, can you maybe, you mentioned hydraulic fracturing and how we can do that properly through the regulatory angle. So maybe can you touch on that? How CNH is looking at the opportunity and challenges within hydraulic fracturing, and then maybe from there you can go into your own maybe some final remarks, and we'll circle around everyone some remarks and then go into some questions. So go ahead, Dr. Moreira.
If you look at the total resources of oil and gas in Mexico, 52 are non-conventional. So if you say no hydraulic fracturing, we're really closing the door on half the possibilities of this country. So we have to take fracking very seriously, because it's 50%, 52% actually of the whole reserves and resources of the nation. Okay. So we were unlucky in certain things with regards to fracking. One of them is that the energy reform comes at a time when the price of oil was like $100. So it seems more sensible to go to oil first and leave gas for later, because you could buy gas cheaply from the US. The other thing that we were unlucky was what we call the mining, how would I call it? I don't know the word in English, amparo, like most of the area south of the fields in the US, okay, either, well, if you analyze the biggest fields in the US, they continue in Mexico, mostly in Coahuila, okay? So Coahuila is the area that has more potential. And there were roughly 100 areas in the area of Coahuila that were prepared to be put for tenders to be assigned to produce gas. Okay, unfortunately, the mining companies declared that the mining permissions gave them the possession of the gas as well. And of course, there was a conflict there, because to give you an area, we have to prove that you have the technological knowledge and the financial resources needed to develop the area. So the fighting about who owned the rights for oil and gas in Coahuila went on for 5 years, and it went from one court to the next, reaching all the way to the Supreme Court. Okay, so we lost 5 years in assigning areas in that area that is just south of Eagle Ford and south of Permian. So we were unlucky that we, in this legal fight with the mining companies. But finally, we should finally accept that we have a lot of resources in Coahuila, Nuevo León, and all the way to Chihuahua, which are really like at least 25 to 30% of all the resources of the nation, and start seriously to analyze fracking. Okay, how can we produce oil and gas through fracking? Okay, Texas is an example. Texas has the companies, the technology. It'd be quite easy to go into that way, but we need to have a very clear policy to start developing those areas. Okay, I've heard a lot of the things that the fracking lobby has against fracking. There is a huge fracking lobby in Mexico opposed to fracking, and the arguments that they use are not very convincing. They say fracking produces earthquakes. And the reply is, yes, it does, but they're no more than like drilling for water in the Mexico City Valley. Okay, so nobody has said we shouldn't get water from the on the ground around Mexico City. So we have to have a serious debate about fracking and how to make it ecologically sustainable. And we have a lot of resources. If you go to cnh.com, you can see what is the amount of resources that we have in non-conventional areas. So those areas go from Chihuahua, Coahuila, Nuevo León, Tamaulipas, and all the way to Veracruz. So it's a huge opportunity, and it's a problem that we have to face at some point because our resources are there, and most of the resources of gas in Mexico are in that area. So I leave it there. I think it's a problem that we have to solve in the very near future. Well, I don't know if I went too far. Okay, sorry.
No, that's great. Thank you. I think everyone is interested in it. Certainly the discussion has evolved, right? And Mexico has the benefit of seeing some of the other countries pursue it, right? And what are some of the risks and opportunities? So, Alexandro, I think I'll go to you. Kind of maybe just a bit free, kind of time for some final remarks, maybe tie some of the comments. You can focus on fracturing or not, whichever way you want to go.
Thank you, Niels. Well, I think that the conclusion for me to this panel is that the interest is there for the Mexican oil and gas market. The price right now, it's really good. The conditions are there. It's just the willingness of all the parties to put this together and start working right now. Because again, for me, the time is key, because the energy sector and it's changing quickly. So if we have oil, we need to take it out right now, because the next thing will be the transition to gas. So what is going to happen with all the resources that are down there, that it's gonna, for me, eventually start losing value. So there are valuable resources right now that we can go for it. Regarding the fracking, as I say, well, like the Dr. Moreira says, there is a huge potential in Mexico for that. But I don't know if in the next 3 years is something that we are gonna see that is gonna happen. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think that the policy in Mexico right now for that is not open. That's why I say that we should focus, or what is feasible right now to happen. Like all the farm outs, I think in the conventional part are really feasible and are really necessary to go for it. I think that we are in a good moment. The demand is there, and it will be increasing with the COVID hopefully being over. So there is, I think right now, all the elements are there for the private companies and the government and Pemex to put something together and start making the things happen.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I guess I didn't define how far into the future you're looking, right? So is it this year and next, which you're kind of speaking to there? And then as we talk about the future for gas and those items, maybe it is still a bit further out, but that still will be needed. Yvonne, how about yourself? Some final remarks, and maybe tie on any of the other comments you wanted to discuss.
Our organization, Exterran, has been since the 1990s. And is planning to stay for plenty more years to support Mexico, to support Pemex, and support the private operators. And we believe there is much to develop in Mexico, both in prospective resources and also mature fields. There is this specific opportunity to tap into the shale reserves at the north of the country, but proper policies, proper regulatory context security and investment conditions need to happen for that development. And in wrapping up, I believe that as a country that we need to engage more in farm outs and collaboration to develop both conventional and unconventional reserves. We need expertise, we need great logistics, we need capital above all, and being able to increase onshore gas production. And specifically, I mentioned natural gas, which is well known to be the energy transition fuel. So I think that as a country, we need to develop a specific agenda and specific objectives in terms of development of natural gas resources. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think kind of all agree on that, right? And starting off, we all know that Mexico has amazing resources, and it's really just and their desire to have them for the benefit of the country. It's just how we do it, right? It is kind of what we were discussing. One thing for me, I think that was even good, a good reminder. Things take time, right? It is the evolution. Of course, you start with exploration and move through towards production and building that infrastructure, right? So it takes some time for these results to show up in the actual production. But as all of you have shown, that there's been a significant amount of advancement over the last years, even with all the challenges that we've faced, right? So I'm just kind of looking through, and I guess really that focus on gas as we move forward, which kind of just anecdotally, even from myself in our time in Mexico, the conversation has certainly moved from almost exclusively oil towards gas. So we have some questions, but we also will have the breakout room after. I guess maybe I'll give you another opportunity, just go through you all quickly, just one more minute if anything else that's triggered you wanted to mention, Dr. Moreira?
I would like to mention something which I think is very important. One of them is they say that no problem is bad if you learn from your problem. And in Mexico, we have that problem that past winter. The Texas distribution system collapsed for some time. I think they reduced the amount of gas that they sent to Mexico about 20%, but that 20% was enough to have huge areas of the country go into darkness. Okay, in Monterrey, in my house, we didn't have electricity for 24 hours because they have that problem in Texas. So just in terms of national security, we should not depend so much on the US, okay? We have two problems there. We depend too much on the US, and B is we are exporting oil and importing gas, and our exporters are in danger of losing value, and our imports are going to be more expensive. So we have to think very clearly in the future of gas in this country. And I think you were right. I think gas should be the discussion, not only oil. Thank you.